Well, hello and good evening to the 60-minute show. Another week has flown by, and here we are again, live Tuesday night. I'm Ian Stafford. I'm your congenial host for the night, and welcome to a show which is going to feature Mr. Mark Butcher as our main guest. Before we introduce the fine former England batsman and current Sky TV pundit and musician of great renown as well. I just want to say, first of all, hope you're all well, hope you're safe. We're not out of the woods yet, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. As always, a big thank you to our sponsors, Jura, Fanatics, Sedulu, Source One Associates, IPS and Vinex. A little heads up that next Tuesday's 60-minute show is with David Coulthard, the former Formula One star. So really excited about that. Looking forward to catching up with DC again. Fantastic lunch guest at the Spawning Club a couple of years ago. Very down to earth despite his enormous fame and standing and wealth, etc. So well worth tuning in for that. Don't forget it's free, everybody, as well. And after that, we have Phil the Cat Tufnell. Then we have Barry Hearn. And after that, we've just sorted out Mr. Peter Shilton. So he'll be a guest as well in the forthcoming weeks. Another quick heads up, don't forget Thursday nights is quiz night, the sports quiz with the stars. We had Monty Panesar last Thursday. That was pretty chaotic, shall we say. This Thursday, i.e. in 48 hours, it's Mr. Neil Back, the England Rugby World Cup winner, of course. And the following week, it's David Gower. And the following week, it's Asmir Begovic, the former Stoke, Chelsea, Bournemouth goalkeeper. He's now at a small club called AC Milan. Great friend of the club's, really interesting guy. He's going to be our co-quiz master a little bit further on. I think it's July the 7th. I think we've got Asmir. So we've got some great guests coming up, but we've got a great guest tonight, of course, as well. And fingers crossed, he's not going to do a Sam Allardyce on us and rock up late, which meant I had to resort to telling you about my holidays. With a bit of luck, Mr. Mark Butcher is there, ready and waiting to drop in to this show. Are you there, Mark? Are you there, Mr. Mark Butcher? Where are you, Mark? Hopefully he's there. I know he was there. Oh, hello. I see some activity. Aha! There he is. Can you see me and hear me, Mr. Mark Butcher? Hello, Mark. Can you see me? Have you got your volume on or off? Have you got your mute on at the moment? Hello, Mark. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Oh, the joys of live streaming. Mark, hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Ah, connected to audio. That sounds good. Live streaming. Can't beat it. Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You got me.
Ah, fantastic. Can you, I don't hear that loud and clear. Can you speak up or turn your audio up a little bit?
I shall do my best. I'm not where I wanted to be. I'm out in the shed. Little one's asleep. So I've had to rig up some microphones and whatever else because the audio on the computer itself is no good.
Oh, yeah, that's better. I can hear you loud and clear, and I can see Jimi Hendrix over your shoulder as well. So happy days. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, fine.
Fantastic. Okay, Mark, well, listen, thanks for joining us tonight. Before we talk about all things cricket and your career, I guess we should start, as I do every week at the moment. It's a question that I've never had to ask before, and hopefully in a few weeks' time I never have to ask again. But lockdown, how's it been for you, my friend? What a weird, surreal, obviously in some cases absolutely tragic set of circumstances we find ourselves in. How's it been for you?
Well, much the same as everybody else, I guess. I've had no work to speak of. All that sort of cancelled, as it would be in the sporting world at the moment. And so I've just been, hanging out, getting under the wife's feet. and reacquainting myself with my little one who turned 3 last weekend. So she's been a challenge because they've got nothing to do. Can't go and visit their friends. Can't go to all the normal sort of classes and fun stuff that they would normally do. So I've had to become the fun bus for a little while, which is it's hard work, This bringing up kids.
Should have thought about that. So have you? I mean, some people have got fit. Some people are eating healthier. Some people have got some positives out of this. I guess spending time with with your kids is a positive. Anything else? Are you leaner, fitter, slimmer, healthier?
No, not really. I mean, there's been a bit of exercise and stuff, but the time given to sort of doing things on your own has been pretty much non-existent really with the little one. So no, I've just been doing a bit of recording, a bit of writing every once in a while, but mainly it's been childcare stuff.
Okay, well, things are about to return. I wouldn't say quite back to normal yet, but at least it's sort of baby steps. Cricket's just around the corner, as you know. Are you sort of excited by? It's going to be cricket, but not quite as we know it.
Look, I don't think it matters what sort of state it's in, as long as there is some. It's been it must have been incredibly difficult for the players. From my point of view, I planned on having a bit of a break from the end of the Pakistan Super League until the blast kicked off. So I was ready for having a break from the game anyway. But for those players who put their kit away in last September and had gone through the whole pre-season, which starts in October nowadays, and then to get to April and to have no season starting and no idea when that might begin, it must have been absolutely terrible for them. And you add into that all the stuff about some people might be in the last year of a contract, other guys are kind of a little bit here and there as to how their careers are going. Some of them might have been taking off, and that momentum could have been stopped. So I really feel for the players in the circumstances, and for the fans as well. I know that a lot of people kind of have that sort of seasonal sort of deficit syndrome with the winters and everything like that. And as soon as you can feel the sun on your back and smell the grass being mown, it's cricket season, and people get excited about it. And so that's been terrible for them too.
Yeah, the smell of linseed oil, the willow on leather, all that stuff. Do you know what? After last summer, I mean, we've had some great summers over the years, but very hard to think of one to beat last summer. It's almost like a huge slap in the face, as if we had it almost too good last summer. Maybe if we could just go back a little bit to last summer. Obviously, the Ashes was a 2-2. I think, bearing in mind that most of that team had played in that World Cricket Cup, I think it was maybe, I'm interested to know your view, a better result than perhaps it shows on paper. And of course, you had Ben Stokes doubling up as Superman. Prior to that, of course, you had the World Cup. Now, I was lucky enough to be at the England Rugby World Cup win when Johnny Wilkinson popped over the drop goal with 28 seconds to go. And I thought, well, you're never going to get anything more dramatic than that. But I think last summer, maybe even beat it.
Well, I think it did, yeah. I don't recall ever seeing anything like it. I hope I never get to see anything like it again. It was, too nerve-wracking. The game comes under a lot of stick every single year, every single era. It seems, they're talking about the death of Test cricket, or this is no good anymore, or things were always better in the past. It's nonsense every year, but every year that the game faces it. And last summer was a huge opportunity for the sport to show the world, if not convince everybody in the UK, that it is still our number one summer game. And you have a World Cup and an Ashes series to do it. And I don't think you could have asked for any more. England went in as favourites, obviously, in the tournament. But England favourites and tournament play are never three things that sit particularly easily. So, losing to Sri Lanka in that match at Headingley, sort of in the midpoint of the tournament, so threw the whole thing wide open again. I mean, that England had to win all of their remaining group matches to guarantee getting themselves into the top four. And this from a side that had been absolutely annihilating teams right the way through the last 4-year cycle. So there was drama there. They put in two or three of the best performances you'd ever see from an England team under that sort of pressure to get themselves into the semi-final, then destroyed Australia in that semi-final. And, it should have been plain sailing, really, shouldn't it? Half decent pitch, and it probably would have been. But the game had other ideas. And you ended up with what was one of the most thrilling, one of the most extraordinary sporting contests, never mind cricketing contests, that you're ever likely to see. And you quite rightly say that the majority of those guys had to pick themselves up again a matter of 2 weeks later. There was also, a test match against Ireland, of course, that jumped in between, that some of the guys didn't get the time off. They went straight from that into that test match and very nearly lost it. And then looked like they were shell-shocked, through much of the Ashes series and still until Ben Stokes did what he did at Headingley. And then in the end, you're right, 2-2 wasn't so bad. Obviously lost the Ashes, which is a real shame. But at the same time, I don't think the sport could have asked for anything more. And therefore, this makes this just so much more upsetting in that all of that goodwill that was built up, all of the excitement around another season, the heroes wanting to see Ben Stokes in action again on home soil is gone. So, listen, the guys will do their best to make the very best of it this summer. And thank goodness for the West Indies deciding that they were going to get on the plane and come over this month.
Yeah, good for them. We'll never know. But if the shoe had been on the other foot, Butch, I don't know. But so we'll always be thankful the West Indies won't be for coming over here.
Yeah, perhaps best not ask that question. No. Look, there are all kinds of things that come to bear in these international negotiations, I suppose. And part of that is to do with the fact that some boards are more equal than others, shall we say. The West Indies will be expecting a big favour from the ECB when the time comes. And I have no doubt they'll get one and they'll have deserved it too.
Just one final thing about the last summer. I'm sure you're a massive sports fan in general, despite being a Crystal Palace fan. It wasn't just that England won. Like when you talk about sport, in the pubs and you debate it, it's the great moments. It's the moments of luck, or it's the marginal gains that make the difference. So England didn't just win the World Cup last summer. They won it with the guy who went a long way to winning it being caught on the boundary. And then Trent Bolt steps over, for six, and then an over later deflects the ball. I mean, how often have you seen a guy diving to stay in to not be run out and inadvertently deflects it for a boundary? I mean, it was if you said beforehand this is what's going to happen, there's no way you'd believe that.
No, I mean none of what happened in the last hour or so of that run change. I mean, listen, I thought at the halfway point that 241 was going to take some chasing. And then after 15 overs of our reply, I thought we'd lose by 20, 25 at least. I just couldn't see, you had players like Joe Root not being able to hit the ball off the square. The pitch was bad, was not good for batting on. New Zealand were absolutely outstanding with the ball and in the field. And you just thought the pressure is going to become too much and there is no way they're going to chase down 241. And this is from a team that has chased upwards of 350, 380, no problem. And so just for us to be the two innings that Joss and Ben played just to keep us in it, never mind get them to level peggings, were incredible knocks under that sort of pressure. And as you say, it took a guy stepping on the rope. Probably no reason that he should have done, barring pressure and perhaps, the Lord Slope may have played a bit of a part. He didn't quite know where he was and he stepped on the line, Trent Bolt. And as you say, the ricochet was just completely bizarre. I mean, Ben, it was probably the best timing of any shot that Ben Stokes had throughout the innings. It just came straight off the middle and there was no stopping it. So, look, we needed an enormous slice of luck just to tie it. And in the end, we still didn't win, did we? I suppose, but for barring the regulations, we were, there's still a run. There's still a run to be had somewhere in that contest.
Do you know what? It just goes to show again that sport is decided by marginal gains. Ultimately, the World Cup was won by half a metre and less than half a second, i.e., as in the run out. If Joss, something that was meat and drink, but not in that situation, if he just fumbled it, that was the World Cup gone. Or if Jason Roy's throw, and he'd done some bad ones earlier, had been off target, that would have been it. So the margins are so ridiculously fine, aren't they?
They are. I mean, you could go back further than that. You could say that one of the inside edges past leg stump from Johnny Bairstow in England's reply meant that the boundary count was up above New Zealand's. You know, there were it's just daftness like that. I mean, listen, I think it's a shame that somebody had to lose the game. Great that it wasn't us. You know, I don't think that anybody that was there will ever forget that. And put it this way, we're talking about sort of, you know, the game perhaps dwindling in terms of its place as a main sport in this country. Anybody who watched that will tune in to cricket matches forevermore, having seen that. And that was the opportunity that the game had. It was the opportunity that the team knew that it had to win, but also to kind of to pump the game's tires up as much as possible. And they delivered on both counts.
One final thing about last summer before we move on, and we will be talking about somebody else who scored an amazing ton at Henningley a little bit further in this chat. But that innings from Ben Stokes, perhaps as a former Test batsman of some repute, you could put it into context. And I don't just mean what he scored and the smashing it all over the place, but from start to finish, because it had many layers, didn't it, that innings?
It did, yeah. Not to mention the fact that he kind of kept us in the game with the ball on the Friday night as well. Bowled that incredible spell that sort of seemed to last forever over the course of the late on the Friday and whatever else. And then when he came to the crease on the Saturday, it took him 70 balls to get to 2 or 3, I think. Or was it a single? Anyway, I haven't got the numbers to hand, but an extraordinarily long time, 10 overs plus to make 2 or 3 runs. And then, of course, he then has to flick the switch in a way that very, very few players ever could have done when he realised that the only way that England were going to win the Test match and stay in the Ashes was for him to score all the runs by himself, you know. And some of the shots he played there were they defied belief. They really did. I was sat with the old man, actually. Me and my dad was sat watching it in the front room, and both of us were out of our seats on several occasions, and just looking at each other going, did he really just do that? You know, it was absolutely incredible. One of the greatest knocks I've ever seen. And in fact, it was the second time it happened in 2019, because the Sri Lankan left-hander by the name of Kusal Perera played a similar innings, made 150 not out against South Africa in Durban. I happened to be in the dungeon at Sky doing the continuity stuff, and so I sat and watched that with my mouth open, watching these guys. I mean, it's the beauty of the way the game's gone, actually, is that back in the old days before T20 perhaps, players would be able to play great knocks, but all of a sudden, if you were asking a guy to go out there and with everybody back on the boundary, score 100 on his own with number 11 at the other end, you'd struggle. Even Lara would struggle to do it under those circumstances. Although he did some extraordinary things himself. But for the players then to be able to sort of flick the switch and go between playing in a very orthodox and sort of leave it outside off stump Test match fashion, to then start sort of scooping and sweeping the ball over the deep long leg and just reverse hits over point and all the rest of it, to go to that level, to then go out and win a match and not make a mistake is just staggering. It's so good. And again, people sort of talk about things being better in the old days. Really? Are you sure? You sure about that, people?
All right, before we talk about your career, one other thing as well. We talked about cricket coming back, football's coming back as well. Again, not quite as we know it. You're a Croydon boy, so there's only one team you can support. We've already alluded to it, yes. The mighty Palace. You must be quite happy being a Crystal Palace fan. I mean, your expectations won't be. You tell me, what are your expectations every year? Sort of just stay in the Premier League?
Yeah, always. Yeah. I mean, I don't see that there's any. I don't see that there's any problem with that. We saw what happened to a club not far away from Crystal Palace and Charlton, who got greedy with top 10 finishes virtually every year under Alan Kirbishley, and now where are they? It's a tough old world out there in with all the money sloshing around, that doesn't happen to be at Selhurst Park. And so you've got to cut your cloth accordingly. And I think, Roy Hodgson and successive managers before him have done incredibly with the resources that they have. The support there is second to none. No team enjoys coming to Selhurst Park. The noise and the atmosphere that's created down there is absolutely incredible. And, I'm very, very proud, very, very proud to sort of to call the club, my team, I suppose. And I don't think that there's any worries whatsoever about saying that staying up is your main goal, and doing it at the expense of teams who would spend more money or who would expect to finish in higher positions is also a big feather in the cap as well.
Do you ever go? I'm trying to envisage you singing along to "Glad All Over" and stomping your feet.
Well, yeah, of course. I haven't been as much recently. I was away for most of the winter anyway. Actually, the last time I went, I think we beat Huddersfield 4-1 or something at home. Blimey, the season's all melded into one. But that would have been the last time I was there. But yeah, all good.
Cool.
And hey,
all right, now listen, we're going to
the Palace. Not just the Palace. About being a Croydon boy that's giving me pride at the moment. We were on Killing Eve the other day. St George's Walk, little used to be an old shopping precinct that I'd have a coffee in on my way back from school every day. There was a long scene down there. So Croydon's been putting Killing Eve on the map as well.
There we go. We are highlighting the Ruth Strauss Foundation tonight, by the way, as you know, Butch. And we put it all over the flyers and the website, and we're encouraging anybody to donate. It's very simple. Just go to www.ruthstraussfoundation.com/donate. I'm sure you have links of other charities, either now or in the past. There's hundreds of obviously very deserving charities. Why have you chosen Ruth Strauss?
I suppose there's a personal connection there that I knew Ruth when Straussy first came into the England team. She was a lovely lady. Got two young boys that he's left behind. And Strauss is one of the good guys. He's one of the fellas that England winning the World Cup. You could lay that quite easily at his door. He came into the job as a director of cricket and transformed England's thinking in the white ball formats, and without his impetus and his input and his steadfastness in that plan, which upset one or two people because it did seem to come at a cost to the test team, but without that sort of that will and that determination, and he showed that as a captain as well, in winning the Ashes away from home, etc., getting England to the number one side in the world. It wouldn't have happened. So, it's for many reasons, and they're also doing some extraordinary work with very rare forms of cancer. So, look, there are a lot of charities out there. I understand that, but for the moment, this was the one.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Now, the Butcher family. Dad Alan played for Surrey and a Test match for England. Your uncle Ian played county cricket. Your brother Graham played county cricket as well, I guess.
God, don't call him Graham. It's Gary.
Gary?
Yes.
Oh, no. And also your long-lost brother Graham, who you never knew you had. Did you not know that?
No, I've been trying to keep him a secret.
Point being, you were always going to play cricket, weren't you? But having that family, particularly your dad, because obviously your dad was a very fine cricketer in his own right, I'm guessing had its advantages and disadvantages as you sort of developed and grew during the game.
Yeah, I suppose the only disadvantage was it didn't see a great deal of him during the summers. That was probably about the only one. He didn't stop playing until 92, and I even had the chance to play against him. He played for that long. But other than that, it was brilliant. My brother and I, Graham, spent most of our summers, summer holidays up at the Oval. Watching the games, getting to know the players, playing out on the outfield during the lunch and tea breaks. And so it was kind of an ideal upbringing for two sports mad kids, really. So, yeah, I mean, perhaps the only time that we ever really had a relationship around the game of cricket was much later, was once it was probably about 2001 when I got back into the England side. Prior to that, most of my coaches had been, either other teachers at school. Steve Kember, there's the Palace connection again. He sort of taught cricket in the summers at the prep school that I went to, and my old man coached football in the winters. So the two things swapped over. All of my sort of mentors, if you like, we're all school teachers, I guess, and other people around the game. And as I said, it wasn't until much later that I sort of developed a working relationship with my dad around the cricket.
We'll talk about England in a moment, but first let's talk about Surrey. You were there from 92 to 09. Pretty successful time in general. 3 county championships, 2 Pro 40s, the B&H Cup, T20 Cup, and you had some great players, didn't you? Great teammates around you.
Yeah, I mean, I signed a contract in 1989, so I don't know why I always says 92. It's probably because that's the year I made my county championship debut, I think. But I was on the staff from 1990 to 2009, so it's 20 seasons in the end. Yeah, I mean, in that time, so Alex Stewart, Graham Thorpe, the Bicknell brothers, people like Monty Lynch and Graham Clinton, and these guys from the time before, who were just coming to the ends of their careers. And then you had, the people like Chris Lewis that we signed, who was one of the most talented cricketers I've ever seen. Bold, lightning, incredible fielder, hit it miles. He was kind of like the archetypal modern day cricketer, I suppose now. And then the Hollyoake brothers, obviously, Adam and I grew up playing cricket together from sort of the age 9 or 10. So there was a real relationship there. Alistair Brown is probably one of the most underrated county players, or, he played a handful of one-day internationals. So how he didn't play 100 of them, I will never know. All of these guys, Saklay Mushtaq is an overseas player. Wakai Yunis was an overseas player in my early days there at the Oval. So, there were always a lot of stars around. And it was, I never played anywhere else, never wanted to play anywhere else. It was a great club. But I think it was a tough place to kind of to play and to kind of succeed, simply because it's logistically, it's not a very sort of homely club. Everybody's spread around the M25 and all that kind of stuff. Coach can't sort of say on a whim, we're going to call a half an hour, catching practice or something. You go home because people are taking an hour and a half to get to the ground. There's all sorts of logistical difficulties with it. But it kind of forged in when Adam Hollyoake became captain of the team. He understood all of the difficulties and tried not to make us this sort of like identikit cookie cutter team, allowed everybody to kind of be themselves and not get too hung up on, wearing the right kit to the ground and all that kind of nonsense. And things really took off in the sort of the second half of the 90s, and didn't stop really until about 2002, 2003, around about the time that Ben died, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Hollyoakes. Adam's a good friend of the club's. He's almost stolen the show a couple of times when he's appeared at our lunches. Little cameo performances. The last one, we're all in suits, and he turns up in flip-flops and shorts. He'd slept in Piers Morgan's garden the night before and somehow got a black eye, didn't quite know how, and then absolutely brought the house down. And you look at him and you think, this is the same man who absolutely galvanised, probably wasn't appreciated as much as he should have been. And then, of course, there was Ben, and only you could really tell us this, the enormous talent that we began to see when obviously his life was so tragically extinguished.
Yeah. He had it all. He could have been. Sort of he and Chris Lewis were similar animals, really, in terms of their athleticism and the seeming ease with which they could do everything. We never got to see anywhere near the best of Ben. I think he may have just been turning a corner as well around about the time of the accident. He'd had a couple of quiet years after sort of bursting on the scene in '97, wasn't it, when he smashed Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne all over the place at Lords in '97. And we sadly we'll never know. But more than the cricket stuff, really, he was just such a great kid. He was such a lovely, lovely young man, and it's just one of those horrific things. I mean, we had my time at the Oval. Graham Kersey, we signed from Kent, wicket-keeper batsman. He got killed in a car accident in Australia, in Brisbane. Then Ben. There was obviously the tragedy with Matt Maynard's son. There's been one or two of those nasty incidences have kind of dogged the club over the years. Danny Kelleher, who was another guy, perhaps not as well known, but he passed as well. So yeah, there was in the midst of all of the good times there was some pretty rough moments too.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about England. So if I said to you when you were, 18 years old, in the crystal ball, 71 tests, 4,300 runs, 800s, 23 50s, 15 wickets, that had kind of escaped me. Are they the greatest stats in the history of Test cricket? No. Would 95% of county cricketers grab your arm off for that? I'd imagine yes. So are you happy with your lot? Do you feel as if you could have done more, or do you feel as if you squeezed every last drop of the talent that you had?
No, I definitely didn't do that. I think that there was a lot of room for improvement on those numbers. And for one reason or another, they didn't happen. That life isn't always as straightforward as you'd like it to be, and it certainly wasn't from my point of view. And so, I look back with some regret, but I also think, well, as you say, you can't be too greedy. No. The good times were very, very good. Some of the bad times were pretty poor. And I guess when you look back as a player, just think to yourself, the gap between the good days and the bad days in terms of the quality was too great. The difference between the guys who are the good players, the great players. That there isn't so much of a difference between when they're on and when they're not. And I found that difficult to maintain, particularly in the first 25 Test matches of my career, where it was a real dogfight, very, very hard.
We're going to talk about one or two of your innings in a moment, but just very quickly, you were part of this team that perhaps weren't as successful as you thought they might have been, because some amazing players in Mike Atherton, Trescothick, Nasser Hussain, obviously, Mark Ramprakash, Alex Stewart, you mentioned Kadek Goff. I mean, the names roll off the tongue. And it makes you think, rather like maybe the England football team of sort of the 90s and the early noughties. Maybe they could have won more because they were amazing players, weren't they?
Yeah, they certainly were. I mean, and perhaps this is just an age thing now. People who were growing up watching the game in the 90s and early 2000s are now your 40, 45, 50-year-olds. And so that was their time, in terms of when they remembered those guys and those players were their favourites. But yeah, I mean, you look at some of those. I mean, Alex Stewart, for example. Now, as a batsman only, averaged 45 as an opener, Test match opener. But how much time did he spend yo-yoing up and down the order, keeping wicket, etc.? Mike Atherton had to fend off Ambrose and Walsh and Wasim and Wacker, etc., throughout that career, and ended up, just a shade under 40. People like Graham Hick, Mark Ramprakash that you mentioned, Graham Thorpe was in there. Gus Fraser, who would have been, had Gus been around for central contracts, etc., who knows? He wouldn't have had the problems with the hip injuries and all the rest of it that would have seen him bowl more of his best overs for England and less of them for Middlesex. There are all kinds of guys who for sure would have thrived under a different set of circumstances, i.e. under the circumstances where they felt that they were England players and not county players being borrowed by England for the odd game here or there. But that's, again, that's kind of part of the romance of it. The England sport fans kind of quite like the idea of the pain of it is sometimes more satisfying than the successes.
I know, we didn't know what to do last summer. So you got your first test ton against South Africa, and your second test ton against Australia. And you like playing against Australia. We're going to talk about your third ton, which is so significant, in a moment. But of those two, your first test ton must be special, mustn't it? Because it kind of says you're good enough to be at this level. Did you need to kind of get that under your belt?
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd come close in the Ashes the year before. But yeah, I mean, it was a big moment. The only difference being that this was the game after Ather's great duel with Alan Donald. And somehow at the end of that, over the first 4 test matches of that summer, we were locked in at 1-1, which was just ridiculous, really. How we managed to cling on for a draw at Old Trafford and then win that game at Trent Bridge. And so the last match of the series was the series decider. And I'd been in good nick. I missed the 2 test matches in the middle with a broken thumb. Came back in for the last 2. And just kind of got off to a flyer. I think we batted first. I can't remember if they stuck us in, but got off to a bit of a flyer and had one of those great days where everything seems to hit the middle of the bat. Apart from the 4 that I nicked through the slips to get to 100. And there you are. I think when I had 116 out of like 170 or something. It was one of those days where I was on. And so yeah, it was the match turned out to be one of the nastiest, narkiest, most needly games of cricket I've ever played in. Went right down to the end. Everyone will remember, if you were around at the time, the interesting LBW decision that Goffey got against Mackay and Tini to win us the game and therefore the series. And so it was brilliant to get the 100, but even more incredible to be part of the first England team that had won a 5 test match series for 13 years. I mean, that was the thing. And then our next assignment was the Ashes, barring a little jaunt against Sri Lanka at the Oval in between, where Murali got 16 wickets, I think, and burst our bubble somewhat.
So your second ton was down under. It was in Brisbane. Was it your first ton? But it was your first ton in an Ashes series. So I'm thinking that was, I mean, every ton's special, I'm sure. But I would imagine that would have had equal standing for you to do it against the Aussies in the Ashes down under.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty cool. I'd had more stitches in my face than runs on the tour up until that point as well. And so yeah, first 100 again in the Ashes, particularly at the abattoir at the Gabba, was pretty special too. And things didn't really improve after that. I think about 100 in the first innings, 40 in the second, and those are my 2 highest scores of the entire trip. So I didn't get any better, but it's a good memory anyway. Now,
then there's a bit of a gap before the epic innings, which we're going to talk about. But in that time, you lost form. You lost form for England, and you even lost form. You ended up for a while languishing in Surrey twos, which sounds ridiculous until you sort of worked hard. I think your dad helped you as well with some coaching. Perhaps you could just explain, because it happens to everybody, doesn't it? At the highest level of cricket, you're in nick, you're out of nick. And when you're out of nick to that extent, how bad is it for you, and how do you get out of it? A lot of it must be mental, presumably.
Well, yeah, mental was absolutely the right word. It wasn't necessarily, for me, it wasn't necessarily like a form thing. I had an absolute meltdown in my personal life that kind of affected everything. So it made it very difficult to concentrate on playing or to even enjoy playing. And then, if you're not enjoying it and you're not playing very well, you don't score any runs, which means you enjoy it even less. And, the sort of spiral continues. So, yeah, I mean, I went on the tour of South Africa, the 1999-2000 tour, the Hansie Cronje trip, whilst, my marriage was breaking up. And so I played 5 test matches there, and I was in no fit state I shouldn't have been there, really. I think in the modern day, I wouldn't have been. but that's how things were back then. And then by the time I came back from there, I was shot to pieces, really. So I lost. It wasn't so much losing form. I just kind of fell out of. I didn't want to play. I was hating it, every second of it. And being being in a profession, or any profession, I guess, but being in a profession where you're kind of having to face the public and kind of do all that kind of stuff, it was very, very difficult. And so I got to the point where I was going to quit. I seriously thought about it. And it just took, I called my dad, why not? We've not had this conversation ever. Let's try it now. And I called him and asked if he'd help, and he said yes. And then, so for 3 months, he treated me like I'd never played the game before, which is basically, I asked him to. I said, look, there will be no ego involved in this. Just help, do whatever you think. And so by the time we came out of that, the 2001 season, I still wasn't back in the first team for Surrey, but I was kind of starting to enjoy playing again. And, it rolled on from there.
Well, when you say it rolled on from there, we get to, and be careful how I say this, Butch, because, you had a great career, you scored other magnificent tons, etc. And hopefully this is good for you, rather than, there's this one moment where there's almost out-of-body existence, where you turn into Don Bradman and Sachin Tendulkar and Brian Lara all morphed into one. We're talking about, obviously, Headingley, the Ashes. The series is lost, but nonetheless, Australia 447 to England's 309, Australia 176 for 4. You've got to get 315. That's not going to happen. And then you knock off 173 not out of 227 balls, 5.5 hours, 23 fours, 1-6. That was your Ben Stokes innings. That was your Brian Lara innings against the Aussies. That's an innings that you'll always be remembered for. Now, are you okay with that? Because you did a lot of other things as well, but that's when you turned into one of the best in the world.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, it was simply because I've got my old man to thank for it, I guess. Without his patience and his skill, I wouldn't have been able to have done it. And so, looking back on it, it's much easier to put it in those terms. At the time, it's kind of like I don't know what I felt. It was just, it didn't seem like it was real because of where I'd been and how I hadn't expected to play for England again, full stop, let alone that summer. There a lot of fortunate things happened for that to be the case. 3 or 4 players got injured right on the eve of the selection of the first test at Edgbaston. And so I was kind of the last turkey in the shop, I suppose. So it was one of those things where gone from completely rock bottom to sort of to playing a knot like that. And so I'll always be thankful for it and for everything that innings has done for me since, because I didn't miss a test match for 42 games, I think, after that. And had, as you say, had some great times personally, but also as a team. We were part of a team that won in the West Indies for the first time in 55 years or something. Some great times I had as a player were in that England team in the build up to the 2005 Ashes, and all of that was because of Headingley.
And when you're in the middle there, Headingley, and you get to 100 and you're going on and on and on, and you're hitting everything, are you just focused, head down, or even during this moment, are you kind of going, this is nuts, but hey, I'll just carry on? I mean, were you thinking in that sense, like, what's happening here? Or are you being sort of head down, focusing?
Yeah, nothing was happening. I couldn't. The only thing that was of any interest to me whatsoever was the next ball, and that just sounds so trite, but in the times when you're playing as well as you possibly can, that is all there is. You might have had a song knocking around in the back of your head, but there is nothing else. I knew that I was playing so well that the only thing I could think of was the next ball, and I just kept saying to myself, if I'm here at the end, we win the game. Simple as that. That was it. And the rest of it was just watch, just keep your, trust your eyes and the rest will do what you've been teaching yourself to do for the last however many months. And so when it was over, I mean, I was exhausted. I was absolutely banjaxed. The pain behind my eyes for the concentration of it. But at the time, you don't notice. There's no recognition of it.
And let's be clear, you're facing Glenn McGrath in his pomp. You're facing Shane Warne in his pomp. Backups like Gillespie. I mean, you were facing the best of the best, and an Australian team, Gilchrist, Ponting, Hayden, Slater, Mark Waugh. I mean, that was a special team, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and they lifted the bar for everybody else during that period of time, I think. The scoring rates, the way that they were always looking to attack with the ball. They always, would take the attacking option first. They played the game in a really attractive way. They might not have been the nicest bunch on the field. I had no problem with them. We always kind of seemed to get on pretty well, but they were aggressive. But they played the game in a way that was very watchable, I thought. And so, they wanted to beat us 5-0. The only reason that the declaration came when it did was because it had rained. They lost an afternoon, really. They'd have put the game up beyond 400, and then, if I was still here telling the story chasing 400, then wow. But I mean, the way things went that day, I wouldn't have put it past myself. But we'll never know. And so there was fortune there. The weather sort of, Leeds did its thing and just shortened that run chase a little bit for us and gave us a bit more of a chance. But the first hour and a half that morning on day 5, we could have been bowled out for 70. I mean, it went absolutely all over the place. So again, a bit of fortune, you managed to survive. NASA then loses the original ball, hit it into one of the gardens up at must be Kirkstall Lane End. They never got that ball back. And who knows, that might have made all the difference too. There's always a backstory.
there always is. Now, I'm very mindful of the time, and I want to talk to you about your music. So really quickly, you got a 30 of your 8 tons, 3 were against Australia. So I don't know whether sort of the occasion, the enormity of it made you raise your game more. But you got a 3rd ton this time in Sydney. You also got a ton at Lords, which I know is always important to test batsmen because it means you're on the board. But ironically, you didn't at the Oval, your home place. So hey, listen, you're not going to complain too much. It went pretty well, didn't it?
No, I'd like to have got one at the Oval though. I never played well at the Oval in a Test match. I mean, all those times, just for some reason, I never seemed to get there in the sort of nick. Or if I was, I ended up getting a Jaffa or something. So yeah, I mean that would have been nice. But I got 2 at Lords. Don't nick one off me. I got 2 there.
So you're on the board twice, yeah?
On the board twice, and I could have been on there a 3rd time, not for batting, but for bowling, because I was.
Yeah, you got a 4-fer, didn't you?
I was on 4-fer, and my good buddy and captain at the time, Nasser Hussain, threw the number 11 on the floor, because I would have been the only Englishman other than Botham. It would have been Botham and Butcher, two English all-rounders, to be on both boards in the same Test match. So he dropped it on purpose.
Right. Good to see you've let it go anyway. Now then, obviously you retired. Injury started to take its toll. You retired in 2009. Was that retirement for a sports star is always difficult? That they often get it wrong. It's too soon or it's too late. Was it the right time for you? And were you concerned? I mean, and it's always a big gulf, isn't it? That's left for any professional sports person when they finish.
I can't. I needed to retire. I needed to make the decision. I could have dragged it out another year. I was struggling. I had a lot of knee operations around sort of halfway through 2008, 2009. Ironically, I was playing perhaps as well as I had ever done. Really, really sort of knew what was going on, understood exactly the art of run making by then, but the bones weren't having any of it. And so I was captain. So at the time we were struggling. They were, management changes and whatever. They were trying to go in a new direction as well. And so I woke up one morning, and it was August of 2009, turned to my now wife and said, I think I'm going to tell them I'm retiring today. And she kind of looked at me like, you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. And that was it. I made the call that day. I didn't know what I was going to do necessarily. I'd been doing a lot of work for Sky whilst the injuries were going on, and that had been going on since probably about 1999, on and off. So without being an expert, I'd kind of learned the ropes a little bit with that, and figured that there'd be a bit of work knocking around on that score. And it was simply one of those cases where I thought, if I don't make the call, if I don't pull the rug out from underneath my feet and force myself into getting something going, then I might regret it. And that was basically it. So I jumped, and you find, well, you've got bills to pay, you've got to do all the things that other people have got to do. So you've got to get out there and make something happen. And that's how things worked out.
I mean, you clearly enjoy yourselves on Sky, and you're with all your mates, basically, aren't you? And it comes across that way, not in an unprofessional way, but just in a relaxed sort of way. You've taken to it like a duck to water. Do you enjoy it as well as much as you appear to, with Nasser and Athers and Rob Key and all these guys you played with and against for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all do. I mean, look, there's a serious side to it. It's people pay money to watch the sport. They enjoy it. They take it seriously, and so do we. At the same time, it's not life and death. It is there to be enjoyed. You try and bring as much expertise and at times empathy as you possibly can to the gig, because it's a tough old game, and these guys are all human, and we've all been through it too. But yeah, the more fun you can have. I mean, listen, the best way I can describe it is this: is that if it's the perfect world for me, because I don't have to carry the disappointment of a loss or not having scored any runs home with me at the end of the day. I go, I enjoy the game. I love watching the modern players play. The art of broadcasting commentary intrigues me every single day. How have you made the point well enough there? Have you described things as perfectly as you could have done there? And then come stumps at the end of the day, you go home, and there's no hangover from it. Whereas perhaps at the end of the last 4 or 5 years of my career as a player, I'd take the results home with me. I'd take it personally, and it started to sort of eat me up a little bit. Yeah. So you get none of the woe and all of the enjoyment out of it. So it's kind of perfect.
Now we can't let you go without talking about something that's really important to you, which is music. And by which I mean, there's plenty of sports people who can strum a guitar, like to have a bit of a sing. That's not you. This is much, much higher level. You've done albums. You've had bands. You're always releasing stuff all the time. You take it really seriously. But is it still sort of a fun and hobby rather than you don't have dreams of still sending out Wembley any time soon, do you?
Of course. No, look, I mean, listen, I love writing songs. I mean, more than any other side of it. I love to write songs. The melding of melodies and of words and of lyrics and of your thoughts and the things that you see and etc. The life that you're leading, all of that kind of stuff is fun. I've never sort of been able to sit down and get the bug to sort of sit down and put pen to paper and maybe write an autobiography or something, about my career, all that kind of stuff. But little vignettes about the things that you spot in everyday life or in other people's lives, or the huge things that are going on at the moment in the world, etc., all are all fair game in song. So I've loved music, songwriters and musicians and stuff pretty much all my life. Has run absolutely concurrent with being a cricket player, and so it's something that I love, and I would do it whether everybody listens or nobody listens. It makes no difference. I'd do it anyway.
A couple of things that strike me: you had to perform a song at Ben Holyoake's funeral, which that wasn't a gig. That was something you had to get absolutely right. You would have been emotional anyway. It would have been an emotional audience. How do you sort of get through that?
I have no idea. It was that whole period of time was utterly horrendous, and I'd written the song. Ben's mum and dad, Adam's mum and dad, loved it, and they wanted me to perform it. They were sat sort of in front of me, 15 yards in front of me in Southwark Cathedral, and they were all I could see. I couldn't take my eyes off them. And it was just, I don't know if I sang anything in the right, got the words right or anything. It was just incredibly emotional, and I will never forget it, but it's not something I want to repeat.
And the other performance that comes to mind, obviously there's many performances and many gigs, etc. But the one I like is you having to perform on 5 Live, Get a Grip, alongside Hugh Cornwall, the lead singer and lead guitarist of the Stranglers.
Yeah.
It was an acoustic version, so no pressure there.
I know, that's amazing. How long ago was that? You got any idea when that was? No, I can't remember.
No, I can't remember now, but massive cricket fan, isn't he, Hugh Cornwall?
Yeah, would have been 20 years ago at least, I think. I think I went into 5 Live. They said Hugh was going to be there, bring a guitar along, etc. And I'd never heard the song before. I mean, it wasn't, the Stranglers weren't a band that I'd really followed that closely. So he sit there in the green room and we work it out for 5 minutes and then go on and do it live. Thankfully, I was too stupid to realise how nerve-wracking that should have been. I would know now, but I didn't know then.
Brilliant. Yeah. Have you got your guitar near you?
I have. I've been leaning on it all afternoon.
Do you think, because we're nearly out of time, it would be a lovely way to end the show if you could sort of see us out with a bit of a song? It won't quite be the end because I've just got to say thank you and thank everybody for watching.
Okay, I've got a single, 2 singles coming out on Friday. One's called Little Torrents and the other one's called Start Again. And Start Again is a duet with my eldest daughter. It wasn't meant to have been, but it kind of turned out that way. And I'm going to do it on my own. All right. So imagine that it's 3 times as good. Okay. It's called Start Again. All right. If we return to the first day, we'll be fine another way. Or should we stumble at the same part in the play? If we stood at the foot of the mountain, our lungs full and our feet bare, will we make it till the summer together? Or will we separate on our way there? Is this our failure? Our human nature to ask how we'd be if we started again. I won't do it all because I need my girl. But anyway.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You've set the bar now. We got David Coulthard next week. I'm going to ask you to try and copy that. Mark, we've run out of time. We've just finished a super over. It's called the 60-minute show for a reason. It's 60 minutes, but we're into the 62nd minute. But it's the super over. And hey, what a great way to end the show. So listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been good fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. It flew by. Well done for everything you've done so far. Keep on going. Good luck with the music. 2 singles out on Friday, people.
On Friday, yeah.
So look out for those. Hopefully we'll be hearing your dulcet tones back reporting on the cricket. May not be any fans for a while, but at least there'll be some cricket and your good self commentating. So as we say these days, stay safe, stay well, stay alert apparently as well. And thanks so much again, Mark, and I'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, Ian.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Okay, everybody, so we've come to the end of the 60-minute show. Huge thanks to Mark Butcher, of course. What a lovely way to end the show. What a talented man he is. Just a reminder that next Tuesday we've got David Coulthard will be joining us. Really looking forward to that. But before then, this Thursday, 48 hours time, 8:30 to 9:30, Sports Quiz with the Stars. Mr. Neil Back, England Rugby World Cup winner, legend, Leicester Tigers stalwart, will be co-hosting and asking the questions with me, 48 hours time. Big thanks again to our sponsors, Dura, Sedulu, Fanatic, Source One Associates, Vinex and IPS. And remember, please make some donations to the Ruth Strauss Foundation. That's www.ruthstraussfoundation.com/donate. Easy to find on the website anyway. And so with that, I will bid you farewell. Good night. Thanks so much for watching. And let's do it all over again on Thursday night with the quiz, and all over again next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. with Mr. David Coulthard. Now, trust me, he'll be great, great fun, great entertainment. So stay safe, stay well, have a good night. I will see you soon. Thank you.